On clear days, when the mist that rises from the countryside dissipates, Yucanaean hills can be seen from the most distant plains and mountains. This unexpected vision in a flat horizon has always conditioned the perception we have of it, so much so that in the local dialect they're called mounts. Perhaps indeed meaning the impression of a steep and high altitude, almost the appearance of an alpine chain. In recent decades, having escaped the danger of a rash excavation that was ruining a heritage conserved over thousands of years, the hills are experiencing a new renaissance under the sign of sustainable development and respect for the environment. Designed like precious embroidery over the centuries by the calloused hands of farm workers, the Yucanaean landscape is today a most precious inheritance. It is in fact a unique environmental macrocosm, characterized by an extraordinary vegetation rich in different species, depending on passing from the northern to the southern slopes, and a heritage of fauna, subject to protection to maintain its ecological equilibrium. The park, therefore, must not only foresee, but also promote the culture of respect for the environment. In recent years, together with the usual welcoming activity, more modern forms of hospitality are taking hold, such as the rural farm holiday or family accommodation with the bed and breakfast formula. New models, which together with traditional Veneto hospitality in the homes of farmers, also offer the possibility of a direct way of understanding the culture and the tastes of places. By now numerous, these new forms of welcoming allow, for example, the lovers of an environmental and naturalistic tourism to find direct contact with the environment, immersed, on closing the door of a house, in the great heritage that nature and man have conserved. All in all, tourism made to the measure of man, not constricted by the brief and frenetic times of the city, allowing looking around and changing perspective continuously, to journey as far as the dome of nearby Padua, or on the clearest days to reach the lagoon and the Prealps. Places that allow getting lost in the wood and renewing the ancient pleasure of discovering small fruit, mushrooms and spontaneous herbs at every step, or to wander around on foot, on horseback or by bicycle, leaving the pressures of daily life behind you. The Huguenayan territory offers lovers of art and architecture numerous clues and sites of excellence. From remotest times, beside the hermits, the beauty of the place was certainly one of the elements that nourished the enjoyment of holidaying. And if the hills were already linked to the most ancient Paduan nobility in the medieval epoch, that retained their castles and rural homes in this area, the development of these settlements led to the consolidation of patrician houses or religious communities. But the most precious treasures are conserved in the two towns at the heights of the district. Este, urban center of the ancient Atestine culture, whose remains show that they were a cultural and economic fact of great importance. And Monselice, for some the mount with paved roads, that bears witness to the imposition of Rome, and in the bastion conserves records of its splendor favored by princes, from the great emperor Federico to the da Carrara princes. Arquà Petrarca, picturesque medieval town that welcomed the illustrious poet Francesco Petrarca for the final years of his life. In addition, numerous elegant gentlemanly residences are spread throughout the Huguenayan district. The pleasantest way to meet the culture of the places is to enter kitchens and approach the food that tells us the history, the strategies of survival, and the feeling of festivals, each with its own rituals and liturgies. Losing yourself in the tastes and perfumes is indeed the best way to encounter the culture and traditions of the hills. Wine gastronomy tourism, curious and gourmet, is increasingly taking hold, attracted by the typicality of the wines and dishes that have conserved the family taste of seasonal cuisine. Thanks to the wine and oil, which have been an essential part of the landscape and its history, to the fruit, farm animals, mushrooms from the woods and wild herbs, roots and buds from the meadows. But what perhaps characterizes the Huguenayan cuisine is a kind of naturalness and wholesomeness for which an escape toward the hills is often accompanied by common agreement to a return to the simplicity of healthy and robust eating, sometimes getting close to stuffing and excess. And if wine and oil have been the landmark production of the hills, fruit is the third mainstay of a delicate economic system. Beginning with the fig, as widespread as to enter the imagination, fixed by a proverb which means exquisiteness that makes you swallow them whole. The rosy apples exalted by the poets. The jujubes called zizole, still celebrated today in Arquà, the hazelnuts, the pomegranates, and the cherries. And if the making of maraschino has been imported recently from Zara to Torreglia, it's certain that the Sarese Corbe and Marinella will be loaded onto boats called peote in the port of Battaglia to be sold in the markets of Venice. Thanks to a Park Institute financing project aimed at spreading and increasing the value of biological agricultural techniques, an increasing number of agricultural companies on the territory have acquired certificates. The success of these activities confirms the greater knowledge and sensitivity developed among the inhabitants of the park toward the environment and a better quality of life. The particular composition of the terrain, to continue with the wine, gives to the drink dear to Bacchus perfumes, colours and tastes of absolute value. Growing wine goes back to the ancient Attestine culture and was much practiced in the Roman epoch, at least to judge from the epigram that talks of the Euganean district with its hills painted and embroidered with vines. It was, however, in the medieval period that a great story started. The region, perhaps the first part of the Paduan district to be cultivated intensively, was then called Pedivenda, and the most valuable wine of the area grown. Today, Euganean wine growing is a sector of rapid expansion, gaining qualitative aspects of value. Small companies, blending technology and ancient wisdom, offer a product that, fresh and young, or conserved in barrique, always proposes a striking personality of perfumes and colors. Olive growing is of notable interest, today in a phase of rediscovery. Life associated with the olive emerges as characteristic of the hillside farming unit since medieval times, linked to liturgical and domestic needs. In more recent times, this agriculture is finding new space after unfavorable climatic events had blocked its expansion. Today, in fact, the interested surface is over 300 hectares. New plants, a new sensitivity, the modernization of techniques, and research on autochthonous cultivation is taking the niche production to a high qualitative level. An oil characterized by freshness that goes well with refined dishes such as asparagus, boiled fish, dried fish, raw sliced meat, prawns, and risotto with truffles. Among the products also worth indicating is the chestnut, a Roman introduction to the hills as a useful and profitable fruit. And if some well-meaning etymologist makes Monte Ricco, derived from riccio because of the abundance of chestnuts, it is instead documented as a well-known quality of the local tasty and huge chestnut called marrone, produced in large quantities. At the beginning of the century, cultivating chestnuts had a relevant weight in the national economy, given that over 14% of the forest surface was occupied by fruit chestnuts. Starting from the first post-war period, the cultivation of the chestnut suffered a drastic decline because of both the depopulation of the mountains and the cortical cancer that forced many owners to convert the fruit chestnut into copses. The Hills Park Institute, as part of the Progetto Life Natura, is intervening to save the autochthonous biotype from extinction with a series of actions aimed at recovering the fruit chestnut. Convivial events are also linked to wine and food, and, as usual in traditional societies, are still perpetuated and revitalized in many events. Today's festivals have lost their proper religious and devotional dimension, and we no longer hear the din of the local festival explosion. They're connected to the products of the land and commerce, but are still important socializing events and tourist attractions. In the panorama of the multiple festivals organized by the local councils, the Under the Park sign event has recently been established, taking place in one of the local council areas of the Yugonayan district toward the end of September. The event has been promoted by the Hills Park Institute since 1999 and supported by the European community. The subtitle, Art and Cultural Flavors of the Yugonayan Hills, already highlights the promotional character of the event that proposes to provide visibility and fame to the local heritage and deal with two tourism sectors: wine gastronomy and history architectonics nature, with notable prospects for the future. The thermal basin, consistently a destination for tourists from all over Europe, is a point of departure for trips toward the hills. Abono, which conserves in the Veneto root of the name, the ancient custom of going to these spas where temples and oracles rose in a landscape of magical flavor from which fumes and vapors issued forth. The place acquired a sacred and redeeming dimension, as its name, Monte Grotto, the Hill of the Sick, implies, to which the sick came to find solace. The local councils of the thermal basin, Abono, Montegrotto, Tiolo, Galsignano and Battaglia, coordinated by the regional park of the Yugonayan Hills, have undertaken a path aimed at achieving EMAS registration, attesting to the excellence and commitment to continually improve the management of the environment. And this is the first element of a development strategy that sees the participation of bodies and institutions active on the territory, and has the progressive extension of certification to the entire area of the park, involving in prime position tourism operators and spas. We should remember, among the traditional activities, the hard work of the stone cutter, who with the strength of his arms and dry with thirst and dust, produced articles from huge boulders paving the squares and alleys of the dominant, Her Highness Venice. The stones of the hills are distinguished depending upon the greater or less content of silicon in rhyolite and trachyte. The extractive activity damaged the hill landscape everywhere with the opening of hundreds of quarries. The most devastating wounds, however, go back to the last 50 years, when intensification and the use of modern techniques led in a short time to posing the problem of protecting the hills. Today, digging has been notably restricted and reduced to a few sites. The hills also offer many occasions for lovers of trekking, bicycle tourism, mountain bike and running. The Italian alpine club Rock Gym that uses the slope of the Rocca Pendice at Priolo for primary training and for coaching is one of the many examples of using the Jugaean Hills for sport, one of the most interesting resources. In recent years, the hills have become a great open-air gym, respecting the environment and the physical and mental health of the body. Three golf courses, numerous and extremely well-equipped spa swimming pools complete a framework that satisfies the most divergent demands. Jugaean crafts had their origin in their most illustrious history. Votive bronzes and situli of the Testine culture are the first testimonies. Vases and amphora of the Roman period follow, thanks to the presence of clay on the territory with which the production of bricks was also widespread. The tradition of ceramics is still alive today in Este, grafted over its Parchi del Veneto and Roman forebears because of the knowledge handed down by the capable hands of ancient ceramists. Production reached levels of elegance over the centuries equal to the most valuable products, in this way entering the widest markets. Precious wood inlays, still available to admire in churches and monasteries, the restoration of antique furniture, and the working of wrought iron and silverware are some of the traditional activities that persevere, handed down from father to son. The Jugaean Hills, this miniature alpine range that in the snow-capped nights of winter looks like a crib, hold at its breast a multitude of treasures that are worthwhile discovering. The thousands of guests of the spa basin and those who come at weekends, attracted by the flowering of spring and the colors of autumn, are creating new conditions for relaunching the territory of the Jugaean Hills Park. Moving on foot, by bicycle or on horseback along the numerous natural paths and discovering the environment, the flora, the fauna and the history, and feel released from the grip of stress that keeps us nailed to the convulsive rhythms of daily life. Enjoy the power of physical and mental health that a verdant lung allows, a few kilometers from the city. Lose yourself among the tastes and colors of a wine gastronomy that's taking off. These are the reasons to conserve this hill landscape that risks being overwhelmed by the speed of events.